Hey guys, welcome back to Mystifying Miracles. My name is Kristen, and I search out true stories that obviously involve miracles. We're going to go ahead and get into our story for today and listen along. You may love it. It always ends on a good note. Our story involves a man named Jason Black. He and his wife, Tasha, they'd been married for about 2 years, and Jason was a professional singer. You see, he had just gotten a big promotion. He was now set to perform in the Los Angeles Opera and the Orange County Opera. So this was great, with the promotion, a little bit more money. They were able to be set to move into a little bit bigger of a place. Currently, they had lived in a townhome in Burbank, California. So this was just seen as a great time. Their young lives were thriving. Well, for the move, Jason decided to hire 2 teenage boys from his church to help them move the big appliances, and one also thing in particular, a big, huge tabletop that was glass. It weighed over 100 pounds, so Jason would need 2 big burly guys to help him out. Also, back in the year 1999, Jason had been in an almost fatal car accident, and he made it. He defied all odds and lived and overcame all his injuries. So it was also kind of like a new lease on life with everything, having that done in the past, the promotion, the move, everything. So it was exciting. The 2 teenage boys that Jason had come over that morning were a 170-pound, 6-foot-tall guy, but also a 6'4", 240-pound big linebacker kind of built kind of guy. And so he thought, this is, these guys got a lot of upper body muscle. They'll be able to move these things probably pretty quick without any worry. Now, in particular, that big, huge, over 100-pound weight glass tabletop, it was not only heavy, but it was large. It was 6 foot long on all sides. And the way you had to grip it was just awkward. The boys would have to grip it just so while trying to hold it upright and move that heavy thing. Well, they came over that morning. The boys got to work moving the appliances and all that good stuff. And when they got to the big glass tabletop, they took their grip and they began to move it. Slowly but surely. Well, that's when the smaller of the 2, not that he was small, he was 6 foot, 170 pounds, but he dropped his end. It came crashing down on the hardwood floor, leaving a huge gash. He profusely apologized to Jason, said, "I'm so sorry, that's my fault. I lost the grip. Don't worry, I got it." So they get their edges, pick it up again, begin moving towards the front door, and that's when the bigger linebacker guy, the 240-pound buff guy, he dropped his end. It came crashing down on the hardwood floor, leaving another gash. That's when kind of Jason stepped in and he was like, "Okay, are you guys sure? You sure you got this?" I mean, there's already 2 gashes in his hardwood floor. And both the boys said, yes, we're so sorry. We got it. We'll be very careful. And so just to cover all bases, Jason thought, I'm going to jump in and help them as well. After all, he had moved it in the past with some buddies or family, so he knew how to grip this thing a little bit better maybe. So Jason takes a side. They all get their grips and they begin to lift. The younger teenager, the smaller guy, passes through the doorway first with his grip. He's moving through first, followed by Jason with his end. With the big guy in back, he was moving through the front door when he loses his grip once more. But this time, the glass tabletop, it would fall on the first concrete step instead of the hardwood. Well, this obviously sent the top glass portion of the table falling, and when it did, a sharp edge actually sliced Jason's throat. And in doing so, it injured his jugular veins and it injured nerves that led down to his right arm. So immediately, yes, Jason obviously falls to the ground. I don't know how he just didn't die right there with that kind of injury, but he didn't. As he's falling, he was able to call out, I'm sure it was muffled, but, he's holding his throat and he's calling out 911. So the younger boy grabs a blanket nearby and tries to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, as this is all going on at the same time, Jason is trying to muffle out to the large guy to hold him, Jason, in an upside down position. And this was because Jason knew that he wanted that blood flow that he still had to go to his head to keep him conscious. So the big guy did it. He grabbed Jason, tried to get him upside down, and tried to hold him there. And meanwhile, also, a nearby neighbor sees this whole accident occur. And I'm not sure if they were unloading groceries or what they were doing, but they saw it. They come running over, and they had diapers nearby or with them. So that's why I say they might have been unloading groceries. And they take out the diapers and use that to try to stop the bleeding and try to, soak it up a bit. So he's doing that, the neighbor. Tasha, meanwhile, is calling 911, and it was a blessing because the fire station was right around the corner. Therefore, an ambulance was there to help Jason within minutes. Now, miraculously, Jason was awake and conscious this whole time when, conventional wisdom, like I said earlier, says he should have died, or at least not been conscious, but he was. As he's being loaded into the ambulance, Jason begins to pray. He knew that in this moment, that is exactly what he needed to do. I mean, after all, he came from a line of ministers in his family, so he knew that, yep, I need to pray now. Now, because of the type of injury he had and the urgency, Jason was needing a very fully equipped trauma center, and the nearest hospital was not prepared to deal with that. So they just couldn't. They were smaller. They didn't have probably the equipment or the doctors. So the ambulance was having to drive all the way over to Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and it was half hour away at least. Not only that, but driving through LA traffic, which... yikes. So this whole time, Jason's just trying to keep himself conscious as he's in that ambulance. And he says he remembers the horrific pain he endured while in that ambulance. And the reason being is because the EMTs had to use their actual hands and fingers to reach into Jason's wound and hold together the jugular veins. Otherwise, Jason would be gone. So can you imagine the nerve endings and somebody just reaching into your throat to hold, that just sounds, I can't imagine. So he's fighting through this pain and trying to stay conscious because he knows if he doesn't, he's gone. Even the medics, the EMTs that day, they say that they could actually audibly hear Jason's body, his heart pumping blood to try to keep it moving. And, towards the end of the drive, right before they arrived to the ER, Jason says that he was fighting it like crazy. All he wanted to do was take a nap, to sleep, to rest. But he did everything in his power, and he remained conscious still. Once the doctors start, getting to him as they're pushing him through the ER, Jason tries to actually talk and muffle to the doctors to be careful with his vocal cords, his voice. That was his life, his career. And he knew that, especially in a situation like this, when doctors are, doing an emergency situation like that, they're just worried about keeping the patient alive. They're not really worried about secondary injuries or anything like that. Their focus is keep this patient alive. And Jason knew that. So he wanted to make sure they knew, look, this is my life, my voice. Please be careful no matter what you do. Well, many hours go by. Jason finally wakes up in the hospital, and nurses and doctors told him they just do not know how he's still alive. They had seen numerous injuries that were similar, and none of them ever made it. So They told Jason that. Now, because of the injury, Jason could not move his right arm because it did damage the nerves. And doctors unfortunately said that just cannot be reversed. His right side of his diaphragm muscles, his breathing muscles, that was also damaged, making it very hard to get full breaths. And of course, the right side vocal cords were also paralyzed and damaged. Therefore, Jason could not talk. He couldn't even whisper. And doctors told him that was also, unfortunately, not able to be reversed. I mean, I can only imagine the shock that was to Jason, waking up, not being able to talk, breathe well, and all the while, Jason said he lived in constant fear of dying, of drowning in his own saliva. And that was due to the cords not being able to open and close properly. So when you've got that saliva that's building up, or any liquids if you're drinking, that's at risk of going into your lungs and drowning you. I mean, think of if you're trying to sleep, and I mean, I can understand how he would be fearful of that. 6 months go by, and poor Jason, he learns to cope and just live with this. He learned to communicate with his wife, Tasha, by whistling. So I'm sure she would ask him questions, and he would do different whistles, probably for yes, no, and whatnot. The doctors did perform another surgery to attempt to try to repair the right arm nerve damage. But unfortunately, that surgery was unsuccessful. And, over this 6-month period, you would think that would make somebody very bitter, depressed, or angry. But shockingly, Jason really wasn't any of those. And a quote he says, "I don't mean to sound arrogant or prideful, but I never really went to that place of massive despair or hopelessness," end quote. And so one morning comes about, Jason's sitting on the end of his bed, and he's not really thinking of anything in general. He just decides to try to blurt out the word hello. He didn't think about it beforehand. He just did it. And shockingly, it was able to come out. The word hello. And from that point on, he was able to begin to speak. Now, in the beginning, of course, it was kind of crude sounding. It didn't sound like a normal voice, but doctors did exercises, like vocal exercises with him, and over time that improved. And guess what? In 2 months, guys, 8 weeks, Jason was singing again. And today he gives motivational speeches, and he is still working as a professional singer. And I thought, this little short paragraph at the end, it's a quote by Jason. I thought it fitting and just beautiful. So I'm going to read it. "Yes, it was a healing, but it wasn't like a light switch turning on. I know some people are healed instantly like that. I think God did it this way for me, slowly and painstakingly, so I could encourage people to keep believing, even if they don't leap up out of a wheelchair or have their cancer cured overnight. It reinforces the hope that anybody can be well and whole. If God did this for me, then he can do it for you too. Have faith." End quote. Isn't that beautiful? Just fantastic. From he should have died on the spot and he didn't. He stayed awake, to his injuries being healed and his voice restored when everyone said, sorry, yeah, that won't happen. Beautiful. Let me know what you guys think of this story. And just remember to like and subscribe. That really helps me, and I just am so appreciative. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to see you for the next one.